Can you hear us?
Yeah, but I don't think it worked last time, so I think I'm good now.
All right.
Why is it still not? What's going on, Peter?
Oh, trying to find a tea time right now for tomorrow. That's what I'm trying to get that in before the show. How you doing, man?
Not too shabby.
Nice. That was a killer night you had. What was it? 2 nights ago now?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
If only I would have gotten. If I would have gotten any of my teams through in the punch out, I would have. If I would have gotten 2 of them through, I'd have finished 1-2.
Oh, of course. All your teams were just smoke shows. That was awesome, man.
That was disappointing, but yeah, it was a good night. What's going on, Peter?
Oh, trying to find a tea time right
now.
Ooh.
There's the delay.
Yep, of course. How you doing, man?
Too shabby.
Relive the conversation again.
That's right.
What was it, 2 nights ago now?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
If only I would have gotten. If I would have gotten any of my teams through in the punch out, I would have. If I would have gotten 2 of them through, I'd have finished 1-2.
Of course, all your teams were just. That was awesome, man.
That was disappointing, but yeah, it was, we got to keep doing it.
Oh, find a tea time right
now.
Ooh.
Where are you trying to get a tea? Where are you trying to get a tea time at?
How you doing, man? Is this on my end completely?
No, it's on both ends. I can hear the rest of the conversation too.
I think it was me playing it on my computer though.
Oh. Nice.
All right.
Sorry about that dual thing going. I thought that was on Amber's end, so I was just like looking at my other monitor and not realizing it's on my laptop.
It's fine. If you guys are ready, we can go ahead and try this.
Okay, I'm ready to rock.
Okay, I'm leaving. Count to 3 when I leave. I'm leaving now. Goodbye.
3, 2, 1. What's going on, guys? Another edition of Grinders Live here today on a wonderful Thursday. You know why it's wonderful, Justin? The Rockies are back in town, and I am going to the game. So I'm happy. Also, before I forget, I just got home. I wanted to tweet this out, but Smizzle got me one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. Probably the best gift. I got a nice little Tulowitzki bobblehead today, huh? So Smith sent that in the mail, and pretty stoked about this. It is forever on my desk, and I appreciate it. So get a nice little reminder, Tulowitzki every day now. So yeah, it's a good day. Justin, how we doing?
Pretty good. Everything is finally set up with our house now. We actually have a for sale sign in the yard. So the hardest part, I guess, is in the rearview mirror. So hopefully we get some people looking, and you know, it's a beautiful weekend out here. We've been having 90, 95 degree weather, but it's supposed to be like 75, 80 degrees all weekend. Got fireworks tonight. I'm running in a 5K on Saturday, so it'll be a fun weekend.
Ooh, I didn't realize you were a runner, Justin. This is huge news. You like to run long distance running or anything like that?
You know,
distance.
I've probably done 5 or 6 5Ks a year for a few years now, and a couple of 10Ks. I don't go any farther than that. Half marathons and marathons are a little too long for me. I'm kind of at a disadvantage as a runner because I'm so short, so it takes me more steps to get places than it does other people. And I just do it for fun and to get some exercise. You know, I have an office job, and I do this DFS stuff a lot, so I have to find some way to not just sit on my tush all day. So that's something that I've taken to. I mean, it's not like I don't go crazy for amazing time or anything like that, and I'm not fast by any means, but I enjoy it, and there's a group of us from work that have a corporate team together, so we do it every year over the 4th of July.
Nice. Well, you know what's interesting? We were talking about Roto Grinders 40-yard dash times yesterday, and so what about your straight line speed? You had some decent straight line speed, Justin?
You know, no, not again. Anything is gonna put me at a little bit of a disadvantage since I'm so short, but I would be okay. I don't know. I've never timed myself in that short of a distance, but
we were talking yesterday about and we can dovetail into all this stuff because there's only 7 games and all the hosts have talked about all the plays anyways. So we were talking about yesterday, like trying to figure out the odds of all the Roto Grinders Live hosts and how their 40-yard dashes would line up. So I think you're up there now. If you like to run, you know, you've moved up the ranks.
Probably put me at the bottom at first.
I did because you're shorter. That's why I was like, you know, I was thinking, you know, who Notorious is fast. I know that. I know Beer Makers Fan's a sneaky athlete. Smiz says he's got some steam, and once he gets going, he's pretty quick. You know, I played a lot of sports growing up, so I'm relatively fast. And now we have you as a runner. So I don't know. We'll have to see Draft Cheat and Dean or something like that. Draft Cheat, I think, was an athlete too. So I don't know. We're trying to get a gauge of this because I know we do the basketball game, but a 40-yard dash would be funny.
It's gonna have to be set up at some point now, just for kicks. But
the prop bets on that would be amazing, and not that we'd ever do such things, but that would be pretty funny. Tommy G, I know, would claim he's really fast too, so it would just be an interesting thing. But we got a lot of baseball stuff going on, and before that, I know you just said you have some big plans for the weekend. Going to be interesting. There's some big tournaments tomorrow. What's your thoughts on those tournaments? Do you think tomorrow's going to be a busy day of DFS, or do you think it's going to be slower, about the same?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, especially since it's kind of a split slate. I don't know. I to be honest, I was thinking about that same thing this morning, and you know, it'll just have to. I'll be around, you know, tomorrow. So if there's some overlay tomorrow, I'll definitely be chasing some of that. But we don't have too much going on until Saturday. But I was wondering the exact same thing. I think it'll be, you know, fairly busy. I think the fact that nobody works tomorrow will kind of offset some people being out of town or whatever, not being able to play, or you know, just having too many things going on. With all the technology you got now, you know, we were talking the other day, you can set lineups from your smartphone and whatnot. So I think it will be a relatively busy day just because it's a holiday and you know, people want something to do on their days off, and there's probably going to be a ton of games on TV. So I would say maybe a little more active than normal. but if the sites go big on their tournaments, I wouldn't be surprised to see some overlay too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you. I think there definitely could be overlay because people are going to be out. Setting lineups on your phone, I certainly have had to do that before, get caught in traffic or whatever it is. I've been playing a lot of golf lately. Not the optimal thing to do.
No, it's not.
I will say that it is not optimal, but at least it exists, and it's getting better, especially on DraftKings. I really like the mobile app, so it's getting better, but certainly a much better thing to do on your desktop. We have some other funny things here in the chat that I think are awesome. Sumo suit, that's Smizzle's idea. Get 2 people in sumo suits and have them wrestle. I think that could be fun at the Roto Grinders party. Draft cheat saying we need the entire combine now. I'd feel pretty good about the cone drill. I think the cone drill is my elite drill there.
I tell you, I'll be totally honest. Even though I run a little bit, I feel pretty shitty about my ability to do well in anything else athletic. You know,
come on, Card.
Being totally honest with myself, I am 5'5", 150, so not exactly the best build for you know, the weightlifting part of the competition or anything involving jumping. That's not going to be me.
Justin, here's the deal. There's a reason all of us are in DFS. It's a bunch of short white guys. We all had aspirations of sports, but the reality is we're all short and we're white and whatever. I mean, some of these guys are tall, and I'm sure, I don't mean to say any generalizations, but for the most part, we're guys who are wannabe athletes who, you know, didn't quite make it, but whatever, and now we get to do this fantasy sports stuff. So it is what it is. You know, that Roto Grinders basketball game, that was not that impressive. I'll be the first to admit. So it is what it is. It's funny. But what would be your favorite? What do you think, if you could do, I mean, you say you like to run, what would be like the optimal drill for you? Like, it doesn't even have to be football related or something like that. What would you feel most confident?
I mean, I don't know necessarily confident, but you see the thing that I think would be most fun to go through would be that NBA drill that they do at the All-Star weekend.
Yeah.
The skills competition where they do the dribble between the cones and then pass it, you know, through the little, I don't know which target there, and then you know, go around and shoot a layup at the end. The skills drill that they do with all the guards, I think it'd be fun to do just to see what kind of time you can make, but and it's at least something that anybody could do. I mean, anybody could do that. You know, you might have a worse time than others, but anybody can, you know, dribble through some cones and then pass it through a hoop and run down at the other end and shoot a layup and compare your times to others. It's not like a drill that only a 350-pound offensive lineman can do or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's fun to speculate on. I certainly want to see that happen. We'll have hopefully some more fun conversations on this show tonight just because, again, 7 games, pretty obvious where to go. We'll talk about the analysis here in just a second, but we definitely want to dovetail into some other stuff. And I wanted to commend you, too. You had an awesome night 2 nights ago. We were talking about it. I don't think I've ever seen this before in a tournament. It was the 530 Silver Slugger, and you were 1st through 6 with that. Wasn't it 6 just totally different lineups that all kind of scored in the same range?
Yeah, they're all different lineups, but they all revolved around the Angels. And the key for me that night was I didn't take Alex Wood and I didn't take Mike Leake. Those 2 guys were terrible and both very highly owned. I had all differing combinations of Strasburg. Believe it or not, I had Strasburg on every team that night, and it paid off well for me. So that's kind of ironic. But I had Strasburg and David Price, Iwakuma, and a couple other guys, but I just didn't have Wood and Leak, and luckily they both got knocked around pretty good. So, you know, that was a nice night. They were all different teams, and those were all the rosters I did that night, but they all kind of revolved around the Angels and had the 3 or 4 different pitchers that I think all of them got at least 25 points. So I was very pleased, to say the least, with that night. Wish I would have gotten some teams through in the punch-out, but that's just the way it is. The night before, I got knocked out of that, and that would have been the semifinals that night that I did well. So it was nice to come back from some time off. You know, that was the first night I was able to sit down, and I wasn't on the show that night. I just made some lineups, and that was the first night that I had played any heavy volume kind of in the last 2.5 weeks. So it was definitely good to get back in the swing of things with a nice night.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it certainly was a huge night, and Super Booster was there too. Saw you. I mean, you might have had over 50% of the cash or something, but congrats, man, and it's good to see, you know, Roto Grinders members, whether it be you, Al, anyone. It's it's one of those things where we're all competitive, but the reality is, it's good to see the community do well. So it's fun, and hopefully we all have some more big nights this summer, and then obviously into August, would love to see the community do really well in these big events. So we have some other funny stuff going on here in the chat. FCB Jacob, I don't even know. You have an icon, so I don't recognize the name, and sorry about that, but you do have an icon, and you said, no more BS talk, we got to move to the games. Dean then said, no more BS talk, we need to talk about the 6 games. So we are listening. I don't know if there's sarcasm there, but we are listening. We'll move to the talk. I think this is where actually deserves the most merit in terms of conversation is pitching. There's a lot of guys at the top, some legit aces tonight, all with huge K upside. Talk me through who your number 1 pitcher is. I think Scherzer is my favorite guy for the price. Definitely love both Tanaka and Darvish as well, but some concerns there with potentially weather, and the price tag is much cheaper on Scherzer. So that's kind of where I stand. What about you, Cards?
Yeah, Darvish, I'm completely off. They've told Scott Baker to be ready to start because the weather's a concern there. If there's any chance of a long delay, which it looks like there is, they don't want to risk losing you, Darvish, tonight. So I would say that's probably better than 50-50 at this point, that even if that game does get in, you're probably going to see Scott Baker perhaps taking the hill. Makes it very interesting if, A, you think that game is going to get in, and B, you think that Scott Baker is going to start for Texas. That makes those Orioles bats an awfully sneaky stack. It's very, very risky because obviously if Darvish pitches, that's not what you want, and then if the game gets rained out, that's not what you want. But that's just something to file in the memory banks. If it looks like that game's headed for a delay and they announce that Scott Baker's going to start if the game does get played, boy, that makes it interesting if you want to look at some Orioles tonight. But that being said, I'm off of Darvish completely. I don't think you lose anything by going down, like you said, to Max Scherzer or Masahiro Tanaka. This feels like one of those nights, and I said it in, maybe at the beginning of June. When nights like this happen, everyone seems to come off of Tanaka for some reason. There was one night where he was like 10% owned and pitched a complete game against the Mariners at like 40 DraftKings points, and all the other aces were much higher owned than him. I can't place my finger on why people come off of Tanaka so easily, and I think the same thing's going to happen tonight because I think everyone's going to flock to Scherzer. He's about, 12 or 1,300 cheaper on DraftKings. The Rays lineup that they're throwing out there tonight is admittedly horrible. So I do love Scherzer. I'd probably take the discount and call him my number 1 play for cash games. But for tournaments, Tanaka's going to be much less owned, I think, tonight. I think you might see a similar situation to where you saw last night with Tehran being so highly owned. I think you're going to see that with Scherzer tonight, and then Tanaka be the next highest owned guy. And, I mean, it can't be a night of Brandon McCarthy pitching without me at least mentioning him because he did dominate the Padres. I know everybody does. In his last start, he's super cheap. I mean, $5,500 I think on FanDuel, $6,500 or something like that on DraftKings. So if you're number 2 starter, if you're taking one of these aces, if you need a number 2 starter, Brandon McCarthy's still got those really good metrics. I mean, his xFIP is still under 3. He's got the highest K per 9 rate of his career, and his ground ball rate is still at 55 or 56%. So I know the overall numbers don't support him, but the advanced metrics are still there. So if you're going cheap with a second starter, I really like McCarthy. Otherwise, I think the aces are definitely the plays. But for tournaments, man, you got to give serious consideration to Tanaka. Don't just push him aside because Scherzer's got the weak Rays lineup in there tonight. Tanaka is matchup proof, and he can rack up the strikeouts.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think that's a very savvy point there. I definitely like Tanaka, especially for tournaments. I think both these guys are in great spots. They both have huge upside, and it is interesting. There's certain players that are just not as highly owned as their talent. We talked about Jose Abreu yesterday. He's a guy that just is consistently under-owned. Tanaka's another guy who's like that. And the other thing that's very interesting that I think plays a big part of this as well is the recency bias that so many people have. People just automatically have a ton of recency bias. And obviously, he had a good start last game. I believe he pitched a complete game. But the game before that, he did not have a typical Tanaka outing. And I think some people got burned because he was a very popular play that night. And you'll see it so much in daily fantasy. Anytime someone's coming off a bad game or whatever, or more importantly, coming off a game where he was heavily owned, where the industry was just on one player and they put up a bad night, people just tend to they tend to go away from those guys more often than not. And I think you make a great point about him being more contrarian tonight. I definitely think he will be lower owned than some of these other guys. So we're on the same page in terms of the aces, and I'm totally off Darvish. He was more expensive. I knew he was going to be in an okay spot, but this weather, you just can never risk. When there's this severe weather, especially when you're dealing with a top price ace like Darvish. So I'm not even touching it. I think it's foolish to consider it unless the weather takes a miraculous turn. If you're not going with one of the aces, where are you going for cheap or mid-tier in terms of pitching?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to go with McCarthy, if you think I'm crazy, Sonny Gray is interesting. Another guy that a lot of people will be off with the recency thing. He was like 65% owned the other day and threw up a dud against the Marlins. And they're facing Toronto tonight. So if you want a super contrarian play, they're facing the Blue Jays tonight. If you want a super contrarian play, I think Sonny Gray is the guy because Toronto played at home yesterday afternoon against Milwaukee. Had to fly all the way from their home park to the West Coast in Oakland. That's a long flight to play the next day against the A's. So, you see it a lot of times when teams get in late. They're very sluggish in the first game, especially on those West Coast trips. And Sonny Gray's price has come down, and he's got great upside. He's got some downside too. I mean, he mixes in his fair share of duds. It seems like he's never average. He's either really good or terrible. The Blue Jays offense is good, but maybe the long flight will get the best of him. Maybe Sonny Gray will bring out his good stuff at home tonight. I think he's decent for a mid-range play, especially for tournaments. If you want to take a little bit of a gamble, and maybe pair him with a guy like Scherzer or Tanaka on multiple pitcher sites to limit your risk a little bit, I think that's a decent way to go. I'll have a little bit of exposure to him tonight in tournament play.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really, really good point. And it's someone that's going to be contrarian for sure just because of the matchup. People are just naturally not going to look at that. He hasn't been excellent lately by any stretch, and the wind's blowing out. But he's a guy who has top-line talent. I really am a huge fan of him. This is, again, the recency bias thing coming into play. Last start against Miami, a great opponent to play. But Miami actually beat up Oakland pretty bad that weekend. And, Miami's a team that's pretty sneaky at home. So take it for what it is on that particular outing. Beforehand, he just definitely had some good starts, and he definitely has upside and is a good tournament play. Is there anyone else that you like?
Really, I think those are the only guys that I have rostered tonight. Not that I don't think there's other guys you could look at. I mean, I kind of, Phil Hughes has been very good this year. Hasn't been as good as last few starts, but going up against Tanaka, the win is probably not the greatest chance for Phil Hughes tonight. So I don't really think I'm on anyone else. I mean, Shoemaker, I think, would be the only other guy I would consider. Another guy kind of like Sonny Gray that's been hit or miss. He was terrible in his last start, but Houston's offense has been down a little bit over the past couple of weeks. They've kind of come back to earth, and they're always a little bit worse against right-handers. So I think Shoemaker's in play. Not a guy that I have a lot of exposure of tonight, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him be one of the more highly owned, cheaper guys.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on the same page there. To be totally honest, I'm pretty much on the top guys and going with some value bats as well as some of these Dodgers players. So I'm pretty much standing at the top. I don't really have any great picks down there at the bottom. I certainly think that makes sense. But I do think we'll see most of the people kind of towards the top-tier pitchers. Let's move to some hitting. Catcher's an interesting spot tonight. I think there's a couple different directions to go. Curious who your number one guy is. I'm a big fan of Jaso tonight overall. I don't know if he's the number one option, but he's right near the top, and in terms of value, he's my favorite play. What are your thoughts?
I went back because this is a thin position. It just has been lately with guys being injured. If you're talking FanDuel, Victor Martinez has been out, although he is back in there tonight. Just seems that lately the catcher position has been a little bit thin, and it makes it hard to find plays. I mean, I find myself talking about the same guys every day. What I did last night, I went back and watched Brian McCann's at-bats yesterday because he's had such a terrible season. I believe his average was only 229 or something going into yesterday. So I went back because I believe he had a single, a home run, and he walked a time or two. He was on base 3 or 4 times yesterday. I had one of his better games this season. And I liked what I saw from him yesterday against Jake Odorizzi, who's a pitcher that tends to be a little bit wild. McCann was a little more patient at the plate. Had a great swing on his home run, and I was just impressed with the way that he approached his at-bats yesterday. Now, I know one day in the grand scheme of a baseball season doesn't really mean a whole lot, but I've kind of been waiting for him to turn it around a little bit. I know he's not a guy that's going to hit for a 290 average for a season anymore, but you certainly would expect him to hit above 225 or 230. So I think if you're not on the Phil Hughes train, there's not a lot of history between McCann and Hughes, so you can't go off BVP or anything like that. But I like the way he looked at the plate yesterday, and with catcher being so thin tonight, don't mind McCann kind of around that same price range as Jaso. Certainly think Jaso's an option as well, kind of in that 3,500 price range on DraftKings. I think both of those guys are solid buys for that price. If you don't want to target them, if you want to spend, I have no problem with Montero as well, a guy who hits right-handed pitching very well. I expect some regression from Vance Worley. There's nothing in his track record to indicate that he should be able to sustain quite the level of success that he's had since he got called back up. So Montero, McCann, and Jaso are kind of the guys I'm looking at. Wouldn't have a problem if you just wanted to punt the position tonight. A lot of those late lineups are kind of just coming out. It seems like the lineups were a little bit later tonight, but Stephen Vogt for the A's, I believe, is batting 5th or 6th tonight. He's catcher eligible, 2,800 on DraftKings, so I think he's fine as a low-cost guy. Really, you're not going to get much cheaper than that. There's not a whole lot of backup catchers starting. Obviously, I would avoid anybody from that Texas-Baltimore game because of the weather, so I think that's your option if you go cheap. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from Brian McCann at the plate.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and certainly someone who I hope to see get going here soon. I think he's a guy that in that stadium, it really felt like he would be an elite catcher this year. Obviously, this game's in Minnesota, but it would nice to kind of see him turn it around, get it going in the second half, because he can put up some big numbers in Yankee Stadium with that porch. So I'm with you there. I'm mostly on Jason. I think Vot. Is it Vot? Is that how they pronounce it?
I don't know. I could be pronouncing it. I'm usually pretty good with my pronunciations.
I'm terrible, so I'll lean on you. I'm terrible at pronunciation. So, yeah, the 6th hole hitter for the A's, I think, is a good spot right there. In addition to that, someone who I think is not going to be heavily owned, but certainly has the power and the conditions today. I think he's in a nice spot, and that's Rosario. Obviously, a bad matchup against Greinke, but it's still Coors Field. Wind is blowing out, and I've been outside for most of the day, and it's hot, so I do think the ball is going to carry pretty nicely today, which helps an already nice park there in Coors Field. So he's another guy to consider, and that's pretty much it for me at the catcher position. Moving to first base, first guy I'm going to bring up is Brandon Moss. What can I say? The guy's just an absolute beast. He's an elite player versus right-handed pitching. So that's one guy that I'm definitely considering at first base. What are your thoughts on him and then kind of the rest of the position?
Yeah, 4 hits, I believe, yesterday, and the game started by Justin Verlander. And there's going to be rumblings about Justin Verlander being back. Don't fall into that trap. He had a couple of decent starts. He had a couple decent starts before yesterday, and I have no idea how he got through yesterday's game only giving up 2 runs. The A's had base runners everywhere, a lot of hard-hit contact. There was one inning in which they had 1st and 3rd, nobody out, and didn't score. They hit 2 home runs in the first inning. Moss and Crisp hit a leadoff homer, and didn't get anything after that. So that's 3 decent starts in a row for Verlander, but he did not have good stuff yesterday. And unfortunately, that 5 to 6 miles an hour isn't coming back. So I know he's not pitching today, but don't buy into the Verlander stuff. I mean, yes, he could be viable for the rest of the year. He could throw up a 3.5 ERA in the second half. But the decreasing strikeout rate and the increasing base runners and the loss in velocity, that's not really going to change too much. I don't think maybe he'll have as bad of a second half as he did the first half, but he's not going to be the pitcher that he was 2 or 3 years ago. It's just you can't a pitcher that throws the way he does can't survive at the same level with the loss of velocity. Other guys can learn to pitch with it. Guys like Jared Weaver, I think, are a little bit better equipped to pitch with the loss of velocity than Verlander. What are your thoughts on that? I know that's kind of got sidetracked from the Moss thing, but just real quick, what do you think about Verlander going forward and how to handle guys that are kind of experiencing a dip in their velocity?
I mean, it's tough, Pitchers, I mean, that's what happens. Pitchers get worse over time, and Verlander's a really tricky one because you look at the guy and everything seems so easy for him. Especially when he was coming up, just threw so hard, has that big body. It just looks like a guy would naturally do it. And it's kind of bizarre to me. I know after he got paid, his velocities come down. I don't think it's a work ethic thing or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of him getting older and the arm getting wear and tear on it. But it definitely affects the skillfulness of his pitching. If that's the right way to put it. But he's definitely not the same pitcher he used to be. So anyone who has dipping velocity, I definitely noticed that, and I think it's something to take advantage of in terms of DFS, because certainly people don't target hitters like they should against Verlander at this point. The other interesting thing, too, is I do think he'll become a slightly better pitcher in the playoffs, kind of like last year. Maybe mentally just gains more focus. I don't honestly know exactly what it is, but that could play a part of it as well. So do you kind of tend to agree on that analysis, or what are your thoughts?
I would. I mean, I do. There was something also coming out saying that he was holding back a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gained another couple miles an hour in the playoffs or something like that. Yeah. But, and you get more focused mentally, like you said. So, and at that time, it gets colder most places, and that tends to favor the pitchers too. So, yeah, I would agree that he could pitch a little bit better in the playoffs, but you better turn it around a little bit if he wants to be certainly towards the top of that rotation. I would think that if he gets a Game 1 start, it's solely based on seniority or whatever you want to call it, because Scherzer's the ace of that staff now. There's really, I don't think you get too many people that would disagree with that. But you can still see Verlander with the playoff experience being their go-to guy in Game 1. Back to first base, I would agree with you on Moss, obviously, against the right-hander tonight. A solid play. C.J. Cron, I think, could be a nice, viable option for a little bit cheaper. With the Angels facing a left-hander tonight, I think he's definitely in play. The top guys, I can leave them in most places tonight, except Miguel Cabrera on FanDuel is as cheap as he's been in a long time. And against the left-hander tonight, Eric Bedard, who's kind of started to fall, come back down to earth. I think Miggy's a fine option if you want to pay top dollar for first base. Otherwise, I'd drop down to a guy like Moss or a guy like C.J. Cron. I'm leaving the other guys. A ton of people are going to be on the Dodgers bats tonight. Franklin Morales is terrible against right-handers. He's actually fairly decent against lefties. So not on Adrian Gonzalez today. I think if you're going to take Dodgers bats, take them at the other positions, especially the outfield. Yeah,
we're totally on the same page there. I mean, Adrian Gonzalez is certainly a fine play because Morales could easily give up like 10 runs in the first 3 innings, and it's the bullpen, which is also terrible. But just on its surface, I don't think he's as good a play as someone like Moss. Morneau.
Do the Rockies have 5 lefties in their rotation right now? Is it 5 crappy lefties?
It's De La Rosa. No, Shashin's a righty. So De La Rosa, Friedrich, Matzik, and Morales right now. I thought the Rockies actually had a chance to put some pitching together here. Coming into the season, when they started off hot, I was really starting to get excited about it. With Gray and Butler in the minors, I thought there was a potential for a nice team. But man, same story. Overused bullpen and just absolute dog crap pitching. So. You continue to use players against them. The one nice thing is Arenado is back, which we'll talk about all these other positions here in a little bit, but that does make the games more exciting. No one else for me really at first base, though, to be honest. I can see the merit for using Cron. I like him as well. I wish he was batting a little higher in the order, but that's just his spot in the lineup right now, so it is what it is. I do like Pujols as well, but again, I think Moss is my favorite option for the price. And if you have the extra cash, Miguel Cabrera never hurts taking the best or the second best hitter in baseball. So that's a nice option as well. Second base is interesting. I don't love second base tonight, to be honest. I think a lot of people are going to be on Kinsler, who I would definitely be on as well. Love playing him versus lefties, but the problem is he's so expensive, and I really want to take these top-end pitchers. So I've had a lot of trouble getting him in, which has left me with a couple different options like Howie Kendrick and some other players. But what are your thoughts on the position, and do you think Kinsler's worth paying for tonight?
I do. Kinsler's a guy I like a lot, and the fact that the position is so scarce with good options, it kind of makes him even better play in my eyes. I mean, again, D. Gordon's facing a lefty, and he's also expensive. Certainly you're not going to take Brian Dozier against Tanaka. You're not going to take Ben Zobrist against Scherzer. So you've basically knocked all the other high-end options off the board, except Jose Altuve, who I wouldn't pay for over Kinsler anyhow tonight. So that takes you down to Kendrick, and a nice, safe cash game play. I mean, his numbers aren't going to wow you. He's not going to hit a ton of home runs, but in that Angels lineup, which should score some runs tonight, I think he's okay. Although at 4,200 on DraftKings, I'd have a hard time justifying him over a guy like Kinsler. I'd probably try to find a way to get the extra $800. And the other problem is that you don't have a whole lot of cheap options. I mean, unless you're just basically throwing the position away, you've got two other Tampa Bay guys that are second base eligible, and then you've got Brendan Ryan who can't hit a ball on a tee. So where are you going? If you're not going with Kinsler, you're not going with Kendrick. There's really nobody else to go to except maybe Aaron Hill, who's had a rough season. He does have some talent, so I could see him as a mid-range play. But Kinsler, I mean, it just sticks out because the position is so full of terrible hitters today.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page. I really like using Kinsler in general. Just his price. It comes down to if you want him or if you want some of these Dodgers bats, and I tend to lean the Dodgers bats on some sites. Other sites he's more affordable, but on FanDuel and I believe on DraftKings, 5,000 that really does eat up some cap, especially if you want to go with Scherzer and Tanaka or something like that. So you have to make some. You basically have to figure out what's most important to you using the elite pitching, some of these Dodgers guys or a guy like Kinsler, and you can kind of decide from there. So. You handled second base well. We're on the same page. I'm really only looking at Kinsler and Kendrick, potentially Hill, but I'm not too much of a fan of him, to be totally honest. We get to move to shortstop, and my boy, Troy Tulowitzki. Cards, please tell me you saw that double play. Was it yesterday?
Unfortunately, I did not. So.
Oh my gosh, Cards! We got to get a link of that in the chat right now. So if anyone's watching or whoever's watching with that link, please get it in there. I'd say. Might be the best double play of the season. It's right up there. It was a sick play. Basically, LeMahieu used his glove, flipped it to Tulo, who barehanded it, spun, and made just a rocket throw. It was really impressive. Tommy G even said it was an impressive play, so it was cool.
Well, impressive versus best play of the season.
Not best play of the season. Let me find. Let's see exactly what Tommy G said. Let's find this out here. And we'll see what the chat says, too. It's definitely not the best play of the season, I don't think. I think there's been that Puig catch. I was a big fan of the McCutchen catch where he just completely laid out, but it was an unbelievable play. Tommy has like a million pinned tweets, so it's hard to find what he said exactly, but I'll find it here in the next little bit. But Tulowitzki's back at home. I know it's Zach Greinke. He's still the number one option. Do you agree with that, and how do you feel about shortstop?
I mean, I guess I would agree. I think he's going to be under-owned tonight, so if you want a night where you can get him at a relatively low percentage compared to what he normally would be at home, I think tonight's the night to do it. I think he's a great play for tournaments. I don't know. It's another position where there's not going to be a whole lot that stands out to you. On FanDuel earlier, I was kind of all about recommending Elvis Andrus, even though he's not glamorous, but he's 2,300 over there. Actually has a very, very solid weighted on base against left-handed pitching. A lot of people normally would avoid Andrus against the left-hander because of the limited potential for steals. But if you look at his splits for his career and definitely for this season, his weighted on base is like 70 or 80 points higher against left-handed pitching. So I was all set to recommend him, but the weather's a concern there. So that takes Elvis Andrus off the table. I don't mind Eric Ibar with a decent spot for the Angels tonight, but again, he's another guy that doesn't have a ton of power, and he's super expensive. It's hard to it's hard to fork over $4,300 on DraftKings for a guy like Eric Ibar. So once again, you're getting a position, and it's a common theme tonight. There's not a ton of bats out there. There's so many aces pitching, and there's only 7 games. So you've got 3 or 4 teams that are off the table because they're facing really good pitchers. It really limits the options that you can go at some of these positions. So maybe Tulo will be a bit more highly owned than I thought, because there's just, if you want to punt, Jordy Mercer's there, but he's hitting 8th and facing a righty, so that's not an ideal situation for him. I already mentioned Brendan Ryan can't do anything with the bat. Is there really anybody else that you look at shortstop tonight and it makes you think, wow, I want to take that guy? There really isn't anybody for me.
Carts, there's only one shortstop for me.
Yeah, you're not the person to be on the show with trying to ask that question.
Tulo. Get to see him in person tonight. He's going to drop a bomb. Greinke's going to get rocked, and the Rockies are going to score 100 runs. That's exactly what's going to happen. So my analysis is pretty simple on shortstop. It's Troy Tulowitzki, and then it's everybody else.
Hanley Ramirez is back for the Dodgers tonight, so he's going to be the guy you see everybody on.
Yeah, I like Hanley too.
This is the night where this is one of those nights where how highly owned are these Dodgers guys going to be in GPPs? Especially guys like Puig, Hanley, Van Slyke especially. Are we talking 70s here?
Oh, yeah, in tournaments. It's just a short night, and they're not that expensive, especially over there on FanDuel. Puig's what, 3,800? Like, what's his ownership going to be tonight on FanDuel? I guess there's people who are thinking, I want to take in contrarian routes. That dips the ownership a little bit. But in terms of expectation, they're no-brainer plays, right? Puig at 3,800, Matt Kemp at 3,200 or whatever it is. Van Slyke's 27. Yeah, it is what it is. Everyone's going to use those guys, I feel like. So
I think it's the night to take a chance in a tournament. Not saying cash games lock all those guys in, but play the fade in a tournament, fade the Dodgers, and sit back and pray every time one of them comes up, and hope they only put up 4 runs tonight. I know it's.
Or play the Rockies. Just play the Rockies and Tulowitzki. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think that's a bad play in a tournament tonight.
Yeah, I'll definitely have a Rocky stack somewhere. I'm not going to go heavy on it or anything, but I don't think it's too bad. And it is. I agree with you. It is interesting, but you look at it. The Dodgers are expected to score like 5.5 runs tonight. That's insane.
I'll be happy if they score 5 runs. I'll be fine. If you fade them in a tournament and they score 5 runs, that's fine. If they score 9, you're screwed. If you don't take them. But again, I'm just theorizing because oftentimes I talk about if a stack is going to be so highly owned, what are the benefits of fading it? And sometimes it works like a charm. Sometimes you just get totally bit in a keister by it. And tonight the Dodgers are so obvious. Anybody that follows MLB with any semi-regularity can see the Dodgers in Coors Field against Franklin Morales and put them on a team and knowing they have a chance. But a lot of people are going to do that tonight. I don't know. I even wrote up Juan Uribe in one of my columns.
Oh, yeah.
It's just Coors Field, so I don't know. Tournaments, it's an interesting discussion tonight. Cash games, if you're on FanDuel, you got to put 4 Dodgers in your lineup. If you pick Hanley and the 3 outfielders, or if you go cheap with Uribe and a couple of the outfielders,
everyone's going to do Hanley and the 3 outfielders. Let's just make it. Tonight on FanDuel, and this is another thing. It's just like everyone in 50-50s and cash games is going to have almost an identical lineup. It just is what it is. So that's why I agree with you. In tournaments, you're preaching something that I think is very effective. Tonight is like, and this is interesting because there's some nights where that certain teams are going to be heavily owned and they're a good play, but they're not a great play. Tonight is interesting because the Dodgers really do have an insane expectation. I'm telling you, I'm here. It's warm. The wind's blowing out. This is as conducive of an environment to hit home runs. You got Franklin Morales, total gas can on the mound. He can lose it just any which way. You got a terrible bullpen. You got just an unbelievable spot for the Dodgers. Now, because of that, like you said, everyone's going to be on them. So it's what percent of the time are they going to fail, and do you know what the next right thing to do is? So it's definitely an interesting way to look at it. I certainly think there's a lot of merit for it in tournaments, and it's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see. You never know. Here's the other part of this. What about the theory cards of these road teams scoring less on their first night? That's another part. That's another thing, huh? You
No.
don't buy that at all, right?
No, not at all. And you can get me believing things. I mean, I'm one of the most vocal people about hot streaks in DFS. And somebody wrote a piece on it talking about monkey brain theories and whatnot. You know, it's hard to get me off of the fact that there's an intangible element to things that cannot be proven in studies and things like that. I'll always believe that. You will not convince me that there aren't intangible or unmeasurable elements to things. Sometimes things just happen for no reason. Like you can pick off 3 qualifiers in a period of a week or something, and it's just something that would hardly ever happen. Just happens. You just get hot for, it just happens. But that's kind of the Coors Field thing. I guess you could explain it the same way, but it's sort of been disproven over the last couple of weeks that the Rockies have been at home. I mean, when the Brewers came in, what'd they score, 11 or 12 runs the first game? That game was like 12-10. So we're talking a sample size of about 12 or 13 home series. No, I don't believe in that at all.
Yeah.
Although I'd be great. Hey, great if the Dodgers don't score much tonight and my fade plays off in tournaments. Great, but it's not because the Dodgers can't score in the first game of a series at Coors Field.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't be saying that, Card. You should be saying it's a fact. That's the rationale behind it. No, I don't believe it either. I think it's total garbage. I do think that there's merit to Colorado affecting athletes more than other places, just because of the altitude, and that is a real thing that definitely affects people in certain situations. But baseball, I don't think it's nearly as impactful as a sport like basketball or football, where you're having to run.
Yeah.
It's affecting you cardiovascularly. So it is what it is. It's a great hitter's park. And,
there's a guy for this is just slightly off topic, but there's a guy for the Steelers or the Broncos or somebody, a safety. I can't think of his name right now, that couldn't travel to Denver.
Yeah, it's the guy doing Sports Center stuff now too. What's his name? Is it Earl Clark? Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. That's Earl Clark. He played for the Steelers and he couldn't travel to Denver a couple years ago, I think, for their playoff game. Because of some condition to where it was dangerous to his health if he ran in that altitude for a long period of time. So it's obviously a factor.
Yeah, of course. It's just harder to give it merit for baseball and hard to say, it matters the first game and then all of a sudden they're perfectly acclimated and then they're ready to rock. I don't see that. I know that's the one semi-logical thing, and maybe the only other thing mentally, maybe they're pressing. And this is interesting, actually. We can talk about for real quick and then we'll go into outfield. What are your thoughts on this? And this is something that I've thought about before. When hitters are going into Coors Field or going against a good pitcher, I wonder if any guys, like, they know they're in a good spot, so they press more. I don't know. Maybe that could be something. They're less patient or something like that. That's the only other thing that I've thought about. I definitely don't believe in the Coors Field thing, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think anyone would ever press more in a certain situation where they know they're in a good spot, so they want to hit a home run or whatever else it is?
I think so. I mean, it'd be really hard to pinpoint, but if you take a guy maybe that, let's say he's a guy who's less patient and doesn't have maybe as good of an average as he should with runners in scoring position or something like that, or with the bases loaded, that tends to give you an indication that maybe he might be a little antsy at the plate when he gets into a spot like that. Maybe that could be the type of hitter that would try to press a little bit too much in Coors Field. But it's really hard to pinpoint how you'd be able to in any way predict that.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Okay. Let's move to outfield. The Dodgers outfielders, elite plays, all of them. There's my analysis. Cards. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I kind of dovetailed from shortstop to third base real quick when I mentioned Juan Uribe. I don't think we covered third base too deep, but Uribe, if you're punting, I really like Nick Castellanos at third tonight. I was on Beltre against the left-hander, but again, the weather's a concern there. So I think third base is a position where you can save some money tonight. Castellanos, great numbers in the minors and so far in the majors against left-handed pitching. So he's the guy I've got a ton of exposure to at third. And then obviously Uribe I mentioned for cheap if you want him. And, you got to talk about Arenado for a second since he's back.
Oh, I forgot. I just totally skipped over third base. You're right. And I meant to not do that because I wanted to talk about Arenado. And it is a joy. This is seriously like the most exciting thing for me personally because seats are right above third base dugout, and I watch pretty much everything. That's why it's so fun. And honestly why I'm such a big Tulowitzki fan. I know he's great with the bat, but he is just a wizard with the glove. And having Arenado over there it feels like a blessing to get to watch the Rockies because I think this is one of the most talented defensive left sides ever. I know I'm the king of superlatives too, so people aren't going to give that a lot of credit, but I don't know if you're going to see a more dynamic duo on the left side. I mean, you have guys who are going to win lots of Gold Gloves, and they're just unbelievable. It's very hard to squeeze a ground ball through between the two of them. So I'm pumped up about it. More pumped for the glove than the hitting, especially tonight. Kind of sucks. We have Greinke tonight. I think Kershaw goes tomorrow, so not nearly as fun to stack the Rockies as it normally is, but still, it's going to be fun to watch. And he's definitely a good GPP play. The Rockies are all good GPP plays at this park, so I definitely think Arenado's interesting.
Yeah, I'm on board with that too. I think again, that's the other side of that game. Taking the Rockies could pay off a little bit contrarian tonight. As far as other outfield plays, I mean, I think you're going to see on FanDuel all three of those Dodgers guys be pretty highly owned. Really, even on DraftKings too. It's not like they're break the bank outrageous by any means. If you want some value in the outfield tonight, all three guys that the Diamondbacks are starting against Vance Worley are super cheap. You've got Inciarte leading off. He's $2,500. You've got David Peralta batting second. He's $3,500. Roger Kieschnick is in there tonight. He's left-handed. He's $2,300. And even Nick Evans is playing tonight. He's outfield eligible on DraftKings. You got four guys. Three of them are $3,000 or less. So if you want a value play, you can pluck out a Diamondbacks bat, in there. And then I think the Tigers guys are certainly good plays. Austin Jackson's swinging the bat a lot better. He's back in the leadoff spot again tonight. $3,800 on DraftKings, pretty reasonable price tag for him. And then J.D. Martinez has been smashing the cover off the ball the last month or so, batting in the middle of that order. With Vmart back tonight, I think he's back down to fifth, but I think he's a solid play as well. I think the Tigers guys make the next best plays on the board after the Dodgers guys. And then Cowgill's leading off again for the Angels tonight against the left-hander, so if you need another value play, you have him. So I think the Dodgers and the Tigers are your plays, and then I mentioned some values. That's really, I think, the spots that you go at outfield tonight.
Yeah, you covered everyone that I'm on. That's pretty much the consensus there. Martinez, I think, is a guy who's underrated at this point, honestly. He's been just absolutely crushing it. And in that lineup, he gets to bat in front of guys who are going to get on base all day long, and Kinsler Cabrera and Victor Martinez. So he's going to constantly be in a good spot. He's going to have pitchers, focused in a different manner because they have runners on base. So I definitely think he's an elite play going forward. And certainly tonight versus lefty, I think he's a really nice pick. I talked about the Dodgers. They are elite plays. And it's interesting. I think there's some value potentially in a guy like Blackman, maybe even Drew Stubbs. Both those guys are good athletes and do extremely well at home. So even though it's Zach Greinke, I do think it's still a decent spot to fire those guys in. Greinke especially is one of those guys who he's had mental issues, and that's well documented, and always been much, much better at home. And I think comfort is a big thing for him more than almost any other pitcher. And for whatever reason, he could get thrown off tonight. It is Coors Field. There's also potential for a little bit of rain here, so maybe they get him out early. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see. Go ahead.
Just on him for a second, because I know I'll do a Boggs Light rant for a minute, because
go.
Boggs Light has guys that he just does not like. Kendrys Morales comes to mind. A.J. Pierzynski comes to mind. He just has guys that he just doesn't like. And Greinke is that guy for me. Now, I'm able to put that aside for DFS, and I target Greinke, when I think he's a good play and all that. But let's call a spade a spade. The guy is just an absolute douche. There's no other way to put it. Zach Greinke is just, like you said, he's had mental issues in the past, and I'm not knocking, somebody that's had, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago, he had to seek help for some things and got back on the right track, and that's great. But just the way he puts himself out there sometimes, the sort of sense of entitlement that some athletes get, but the way he comes off just isn't the right way. I remember when they were going to Australia or wherever they played that opening series this year, he was pitching a fit about traveling down there, and he ended up staying back in LA because he had some sort of minor injury that conveniently came up right before that trip. and just the whole thing. I mean, there was that thing with Carlos Quentin a couple years ago, and you know, there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness, and you know, and I know it's an asset on the field, but sometimes he just takes it a little bit too far. And I know we're all guilty of that from time to time, but his personality just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I certainly can buy that and certainly see it. He's just one of those guys. And the mental thing's real. I mean, if you go back, just go look year by year and look at his home road splits, pretty much everywhere he's gone, there's something totally different mentally with that guy versus kind of the rest of the league and other pitchers. And I can certainly see why you feel that way. I don't have a strong opinion on him. I know he can kind of be a jerk. I know, you know, he has that attitude about him. And it's hard for me to, I don't know. There's as an athlete, certain people just have to act a certain way to keep up their swag and kind of keep their competitive advantage. So I wish he would do it the right way too. And there's certainly other athletes who are much worse. Lance Stephenson comes to mind, and some of these other guys. But it is what it is. And the one thing for us to take advantage of is he's more prone to having a big, you know, getting blown up or something going wrong on the road. And Coors Field's a perfect park for that. So. The other factor, too, just real quick, we'll kind of end the show with this. It does look like there's going to be a little bit of rain. You know, Colorado is impossible to predict on the rain, but it does look like they're predicting a little bit here around 9 o'clock. So that could be interesting for him and kind of the rest of the players. The game's obviously getting in. I'm not worried about that at all. But if Greinke got pulled earlier, if something happened, certainly would be good for the Rockies. So that's it for me. Cards, any last thoughts?
Call Me Dad in the chat said, let's all mail Greinke some Summer's Eve. So I got a good chuckle out of that just now. They're just giving me a little razzing for calling him a douche on the air. But I don't have anything against the guy. I just don't care for his personality. But, hey, that doesn't change what he does on the field. He's still a great pitcher and has 25 times the assets that I will ever have. So more power to him and no hard feelings.
Don't cut yourself short, man. This DFS stuff's gonna take off, man. It's gonna go through the roof.
But he's got a little bit of a head start on us.
He's got a huge head start, and it would be very interesting if I'm not even gonna go down that road. But
maybe if we're here playing until we're 90, maybe we've got a chance.
Yeah, we have more sustainability playing a longer period of time, but yeah. I'm not going to go too much further into it, but elite professional athletes deserve, and I know people always give them crap, but it's the most competitive field out there, and they deserve to make crap tons of money. It is what it is. So, any last thoughts, Cards, or we can get off the air?
Yeah, good. This was a fun show tonight. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I know we were able to fill in with some random things with the shorter slate, but we still got through all the picks. So, good luck tonight, everybody. Have a great 4th of July weekend. I'll be back on the air tomorrow, so we'll see you then.
And my smizzle thing. Bye, everybody.